Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang dalam acara Puncak Kiai Apafest 2020, Scanning the Horizon, Embracing the Future. Setelah 3 kali penyelenggaraan yang sukses, IAI pada tahun ini menggelar Apafest secara virtual. Babak ini merupakan babak yang paling dinantikan oleh seluruh peserta kompetisi Apafest 2020.
Bagaimana para akuntan profesional itu bisa memberikan suatu percepatan, outcome base, dan juga efisiensi, dan bisa meningkatkan produktivitas.
IFAC, through its network of member PAOs and other partner organizations, is the voice of the professional accountancy organization.
Berharap seluruh profesi akuntansi memiliki ikrar untuk terus meningkatkan profesionalitas, kompetensi, dan integritasnya.
Tantangan akuntan muda pada saat ini tidaklah kecil, karena harus bersaing dalam konteks global. Maka itu harus meningkatkan hard skill dan soft skill, dan mulailah untuk membangun networking. Hal ini bisa dilakukan dengan aktif dalam organisasi profesi seperti IAI ini, mengikuti konferensi dan seminar, serta kompetisi ilmiah.
Pada generasi muda akuntan Indonesia yang menjadi peserta di Apafest, saya berharap agar para akuntan muda juga mampu menguasai teknologi. Jangan pernah berhenti belajar. Manfaatkan kesempatan untuk memperdalami dunia keilmuan dan pengalaman berbisnis, sehingga kemampuan kalian dapat terasa.
Jadi di sini profesi akuntan juga harus mendukung BUMN yang lebih transparan dan bertanggung jawab kepada negara dan masyarakat.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang dalam acara Puncak Kiai Apafest 2020, Scanning the Horizon, Embracing the Future. Setelah 3 kali penyelenggaraan yang sukses, KIAI pada tahun ini menggelar Apafest secara virtual. Babak ini merupakan babak yang paling dinantikan oleh seluruh peserta kompetisi Apafest 2020.
Bagaimana para akuntan profesional itu bisa memberikan suatu percepatan, outcome based, dan juga efisiensi dan bisa meningkatkan produktivitas.
IFAC, through its network of member PAOs and other partner organizations, is the voice of the professional accountancy organization.
Berharap seluruh profesi akuntansi memiliki ikrar untuk terus meningkatkan profesionalitas, kompetensi, dan integritasnya.
Tantangan akuntan muda pada saat ini tidaklah kecil, karena harus bersaing dalam konteks global. Maka itu harus meningkatkan hard skill dan soft skill, dan mulailah untuk membangun networking. Hal ini bisa dilakukan dengan aktif dalam organisasi profesi seperti IAI ini, mengikuti konferensi dan seminar, serta kompetisi ilmiah.
Pada generasi muda akuntan Indonesia yang menjadi peserta di Apafest, saya berharap agar para akuntan muda juga mampu menguasai teknologi. Jangan pernah berhenti belajar. Manfaatkan kesempatan untuk memperdalami dunia keilmuan dan pengalaman berbisnis, sehingga kemampuan kalian dapat terasah.
Jadi di sini profesi akuntan juga harus mendukung BUMN yang lebih transparan dan bertanggung jawab kepada negara dan masyarakat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 4th Finance and Business 2030 event part of the Building Resilience series.
Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia, Akuntan Profesional Unggul, Indonesia Maju. Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia, IAI, telah berkiprah mendukung pembangunan SDM dan transformasi ekonomi Indonesia.
Akuntan memiliki peran penting dalam pembangunan nasional yang berkesinambungan.
Actively supports the development of human resource and economic transformation. economic development. Through Initiative 6.1, which has been established as a general program of the IEI Council for the period of 2018-2022. IAI is ready to work and contribute to the safeguarding of the nation economy towards Indonesia Emas 2045.
Saya sangat mendukung rencana IAI untuk mempercepat program sertifikasi agar para akuntan di negara kita memiliki kreativitas, inovasi, keterampilan, dan memiliki daya saing, dan sekali lagi dalam rangka mendukung pengembangan ekosistem kita yang lebih akuntabel, lebih efisien, goal-oriented, dan inovatif.
This responsibility is materialized through the Chartered Accountant or CA Indonesia as the identity for Indonesian professional accountants, and the quality is globally recognized. Initiative 6.1 includes 6 steps of action with one strategic objective to strengthen the role of IAI in increasing public trust in business and public entities by preparing professional accountants with integrity ready to face the future.
Kepada generasi muda akuntan Indonesia yang menjadi peserta di APAFEST, saya berharap agar para akuntan muda juga mampu menguasai teknologi. Jangan pernah berhenti belajar. Manfaatkan kesempatan untuk memperdalami dunia keilmuan dan pengalaman berbisnis, sehingga kemampuan kalian dapat terasah.
IAI carries out its duties and responsibilities to compile the financial accounting standards and professional standards, carry out certification examination, as well as other professional activities referring to the International Federation of Accountants and Chartered Accountants worldwide. IAI for Society is run to provide greater benefits for the community and to bring the profession closer to public. IAI's founding fathers have set two goals for the establishment of IAI. The Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountants, IAI, was organized to enhance the quality of accountants' education and improve the quality of Indonesian accountants' work. IAI, Mastering Change, Preparing for the Future.
Gabung Brevet Pajak IAI, pilihan tepat untuk Anda. Pelatihan Brevet IAI, ahli pajak, bedah substansi, temukan solusi. Kenapa memilih IAI? Modul yang selalu update dan materi yang dilengkapi dengan pembahasan studi kasus komprehensif. Instruktur yang terjaga kompetensinya, berpengalaman, dan tentu saja profesional. Apa aja yang didapat kalau belajar pajak? Sudah pasti, kita jadi tahu seluk-beluk perhitungan pajak. Menjadi kuasa hukum perpajakan mewakili perusahaan, meningkatkan karir dan menunjang profesi. Kalau ingin menjadi konsultan pajak, belajar privat pajak juga bisa sebagai langkah persiapan USKP. So, banyak kan manfaat belajar privat pajak? Sebagai benefit tambahan, IAI melaksanakan program kuliah umum perpajakan dengan menghadirkan narasumber dari praktisi dan profesional di bidang perpajakan. IAI juga melaksanakan gathering alumni brevet untuk senantiasa mengupdate informasi perpajakan. Kalian juga tidak perlu bingung, karena IAI menyiapkan berbagai pilihan waktu belajar, jadi dapat disesuaikan dengan kebutuhan. Bagi teman-teman mahasiswa, IAI juga memberikan harga khusus mahasiswa aktif. Selama pandemi, IAI juga tetap hadir dalam pelatihan brevet pajak secara virtual dengan menggunakan platform Microsoft Teams. Hal ini juga memungkinkan untuk dapat diikuti oleh peserta dari seluruh Indonesia. Dan, untuk diketahui, pelatihan brevet pajak terapan IAI juga diperkuat dengan MOU antara IAI dan Direktorat Jenderal Pajak. IAI juga memiliki kompartemen akuntan perpajakan. Yang salah satu kegiatan rutinnya adalah menyelenggarakan regular tax discussion yang mengupas isu perpajakan terkini. Pelatihan brevet IAI hadir di 6 knowledge center di Jabodetabek. IAI Knowledge Center Menteng, Moy, Serpong, Kedoya, Fatmawati, dan Sumarekon Bekasi. Selain itu, dengan standarisasi nasional, pelatihan brevet IAI juga hadir di beberapa IAI wilayah di Indonesia. Nah, jadi tunggu apa lagi? Ayo segera daftar pelatihan brevet pajak terapan IAI. Pelatihan brevet IAI, ahli pajak, bedah substansi, temukan solusi.
What kind of tomorrow do you want to shape? A connected world, working together to prosper and thrive. Training as a chartered accountant puts you in a position to make a real difference, giving you the skills and perspectives to build the tomorrow you want. Become a difference maker. Become a chartered accountant.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the APA Fest Webinar Series 2021, Finding Your Purpose, Becoming a Future Leader as Professional Accountants. Before we start this talk show, I would like to greet IAI Executive Director, Ibu Elizarni Husin, Head of Indonesia ICIAW, Ibu Kondisia Haan, IAI Member and Partner Service Director, Bapak Edward Tanujaya, our speaker, Ms. Vandana Saxena Poria, FCA OBE. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Monica Nabilia and I'll be your host for this session. For those of you who just joined us today, I would like to inform you a brief about APAFest 2021. Following the successful hosting of the AP Professional Accountants Festival 2020, host for the first time ever as a virtual event, IAI is proud to host Aspiring Professional Accountant Festival 2021. APAFest 2021 is the fifth in the series. APAFest 2021 is the largest and the most prestigious annual festival for IAI student members and outstanding accounting students in Indonesia. It is a festival of creativity that brings together the best future professional accountant candidates with the representative of leading company in Indonesia. With the theme, Proud to be an Accountant, CA is a difference maker, APAFest 2021 looks to continue the festival success of bringing together different platforms for aspiring professionals in Indonesia, include APA Champion as a business competition, National APA Award, Popular SI competition, career fair and virtual visit, social media content competition, accounting video competition, webinar series, and CA Scholarship Award. APAFest 2021 begin in August 2021 and will culminate in a collaboration with an annual international activities for young accountant, namely FinBiz 2030, organized by One Young World and Chartered Accountant Worldwide on November 10, 2021. The theme for our upcoming event is Recover, Refocus, Rebuild. This also coincides with the commemoration of International Accounting Day. APAFest 2021 is fully supported by ASEAN Federation of Accountants. APAFest also supported by Spenmo, Astra International, and EY Indonesia. For more about APAFest, please visit our web apafest.iaiglobal.or.id. Ladies and gentlemen, our topic today is finding your purpose, becoming a future leader as professional accountants. This session is supported by ICIAW. We are so delighted here. We have our lovely speaker, a very inspiring person, Ms. Vandana Saxena Poria, a proud chartered accountant, an entrepreneur, and a TED speaker. So, Vandana, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So it is a very a good time for us to have you as a speaker.
Yeah. Thank you.
So for the next 80 minutes, we will discuss more about the skill set needs by aspiring accountant and professional to be a future leader, to find our purpose, to be a successful accountant. Before we kickstart our discussion, let me read you the housekeeping rules and the profile of Vandana. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure your microphone and your camera is on off position. This webinar is being recorded and IAI will share this recording on our website or our social media platform. To ask a question, you could use Q&A function, or you could always raise your hand and ask us to invite you as the panelists to chat with Vandana. Material and recording can be accessible on IAI website or other social media platform. Next, I would like to read the brief CV of Vandana Saxena Poria, FCA OBE.
Vandana is the chief alarmist at the Human Alarm Clock & Co. She is an entrepreneur, TED speaker, chartered accountant. Vandana is a disruptive visionary, master of storyteller, and curator who awakens and ignites organization and people by disrupting mindsets and perception. Vandana is the advisor to the Institute of Chartered Accountants England and Wales in India and has been highly instrumental in bringing ICAI and ICAEW closer. She authorized a joint report, Finance and Automation, and mastermind the launch, bringing IFAC Chartered Accountants worldwide, as well as ICAI and ICAEW together. As an avid mentor, she chaired the associate member engagement for TIE, PUN, and runs a series called Wake Up, Speak Up, designed to get people thinking differently. Recently, she has become a part of faculty at Flame University, teaching and learning on postgraduate course. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Vandana will be given 40 minutes time to present her material. Vandana, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. So first, can you all see the screen?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, okay, great. So firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to IAAI and also ICAEW for asking me to come and speak. I'm really honored. I think this region, the kind of Asia region, it's our century, it's our decade, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see how we all contribute to making the world a better place. Because actually, as chartered accountants, that's one of our responsibilities. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to go through in this session today. So I've got about 40 minutes with you. I'm going to, and thank you for giving that lovely introduction. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my career. Then I'm going to talk to you very much about where you're going to be in the future. So no, I'm not a mind reader. I cannot gaze into a crystal and say to you, you will be here. But I have a fairly good idea, and I want to share that with you. I also want to talk about what you're going to need to do to create a really strong foundation to succeed. So you've chosen to do accountancy. It's a brilliant qualification. There's a lot of other things that you could do instead of accountancy. A lot of people are going into IT, going into data analytics, going into banking, going into pharmaceuticals. Why is it still a good idea to do chartered accountancy? I still think chartered accountancy is the best option, no matter what you want to do in the future. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about the key skills that are being required for 2025 and beyond. So there are companies like McKinsey's and Ernst & Young, one of your sponsors, Price Waterhouse, who write reports on what's needed in the future. So the key skills that are needed by people. And we're going to talk about how actually chartered accountancy helps you, because you do learn all those future skills. And then finally, we're going to end with what can you do to prepare now for that future you're going to have. So that's what we're going to cover. And like I said, I'm more than happy to take questions. And I think we're going to do a Q&A at the end, so we can keep the questions for a bit later. So if you look at my career graph, I started studying ICAEW, so very similar to the Indonesian Chartered Accountancy. I started studying when I was 22, after I finished my degree. While I was a student, some of you who might have heard me before will know that I actually never wanted to be an accountant, certainly not a chartered accountant. I wanted to be a DJ on the radio. And actually, that was my first love. And I actually worked part-time on the radio while I was at university. Unfortunately, the radio station that I worked for went bankrupt. And my father said to me, you know, Vandana, if you had been a chartered accountant, you would have been able to save the radio station. And I really took that to heart. I was like, is that true? Does chartered accountancy really help me understand businesses that much? So I decided to do chartered accountancy, expecting to finish and go back into DJing. But that didn't happen. When I was 25, after I qualified, I got an opportunity to move to Central and Eastern Europe to work for Ernst & Young in their new practice in Bucharest, in Romania. And my job was, I had about 15 to 18 staff under me at age 25, which was really difficult. And I had one boss, and between us, we had to deal with all these multinational companies that were moving into Romania and wanting to buy businesses. So I had to learn very, very quickly. But one of the reasons I was able to do that was because of my chartered accountancy. It had taught me how to understand businesses. It had taught me how to understand what the drivers of business are. So I started working for Ernst & Young, and then the next big shift came. After working for Ernst & Young for just over a year and a half, I realized that I enjoyed teaching people more than I enjoyed actually doing the audit work and the due diligence work. So I asked my boss, I asked him and I said, look, I want to try something different. I want to try opening a training center where you and other firms can send your staff and I'll help train them in accountancy and finance and management. Well, I started to do that. And within a year, my operation had become so successful that a listed company, which you might know, it's called BPP, and it provides study materials, et cetera, actually bought my company out. And because we'd become so successful, they said, will you run the international division? So at the age of 27, I sold my company and I moved to BPP and I started their international division. And I ran that for the next 7 years. After that, I decided I wanted a change. I was expecting my second child and I wanted to move to India because I think Asia has got the best brains on the planet, but not necessarily the best accountancy systems or teaching systems to teach people. And I wanted to see what I could do in Asia. So I moved to India and I founded RAN and 4 years ago exited a company called Get Through Guides. We had lots of success. We had a couple of very difficult situations as well, but overall it was a good company. I really enjoyed working there or building it. And at the end, we had over 1 million people using our materials in insurance, banking, finance, accountancy, et cetera. So it became quite successful. And 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to do something different. And I founded a company called The Human Alarm Clock. And I've become an author since then. And I have a series of science fiction novels coming out next year. You think that science fiction has nothing to do with accountancy? You're very, very wrong. And maybe if we've got time, I can tell you why. Let's see. But the other thing I wanted to show you was the other things that happened along that line. You see, when you train to be a chartered accountant, you learn a lot of skills that can be used in other places. And I made sure that during my life, I did that. So when I moved to Poland to set up BPP, I became a member of the British Chamber of Commerce in Poland. So that was where the UK and Poland would meet. You know, UK companies, Polish companies would meet, they would talk. If government officials were coming from the UK, they would interact with the members. So I really wanted to understand more. And I think this is what accountancy teaches you to do. It teaches you to be curious. And I was curious about how does business work on a bigger scale? What companies are coming in? What are the good things about Poland? What are good things about the UK? How can we increase trade between the two countries? So as well as doing my job, I realized as a chartered accountant, I had the skills to be able to talk to other people about how to improve business. When I moved to Hungary, I also joined the British Chamber of Commerce in Hungary, and I became the vice chair of that chamber. So as well as working full time, I did this in my voluntary capacity because it got me a lot of publicity. It also gave me the opportunity to meet very senior officials, ministry officials, both from the UK and from Hungary. When I then moved to India, the city that I moved to, Pune, didn't have a British chamber. So I rang up the High Commission, the British High Commission. I emailed them and I said, there isn't one here and I think there should be. I think it's really good for business. And although they ignored me for 3 months, I kept writing to them. This is another thing that chartered accountancy teaches you to do. It teaches you to be strong and firm. I knew it would benefit companies to have some kind of Indian UK chamber. And so because there wasn't one, I wanted to help create it. I had plenty experience from Poland and Hungary. So therefore, it was easy to do. And the High Commission then started supporting me because they saw how many companies came together and how they enjoyed the events. Now, because of that, the Prime Minister of the UK at the time started to see how much the chambers supported UK business and also encouraged business to come to the UK. And so he decided to set up the UK-India Business Council. Pune, remember, was just one city. The UK-India Business Council was for the whole of India. And because I had been so involved, he asked me to actually become a director of the UK-India Business Council. So you can see that as well as doing my work, I was also supporting the economies that I lived in, which is something all of you will absolutely be able to do as you grow and as you qualify. And you can do this through your institute, or you can do it separately with other organizations. Through that, I got asked by the Duke of Edinburgh, the Queen's husband who passed away earlier this year, if I'd become a trustee on one of the charities that he was heavily involved with. And I became a trustee of Common Purpose. And through that, I got involved with some other people to do with entrepreneurship, started supporting entrepreneurship. Through that, I became an influencer. I was voted one of the top UK India influencers, top 100 year before last or last year or something. And I was also featured in an ICAEW publication. And you can see the kinds of things that I got the opportunity to do. I got an award from the Queen for supporting British business and encouraging business with the UK. I got the opportunity to write lots of papers for ministers and for VIPs, etc., etc. And I got an opportunity to speak at conferences on how I thought, trade could be increased and the role of the accountancy profession in that. Now, that looks very glamorous, and it was very glamorous. And I got an opportunity through my life to work with lots and lots of different companies. And I would honestly say that if I hadn't done chartered accountancy, I don't think I would have ever had the confidence or the knowledge to be able to do what I've done. So I've had an opportunity to do all of these things. But I also want to remind you of another point. So this is a slide where you can see I'm looking much more glamorous on all of these, but I got the opportunity to meet Richard Branson, be with prime ministers, go to Buckingham Palace, speak on a TEDx stage, etc., etc. Now, it does look very glamorous, but I do want to tell you about the other side of my life too. So on one side, you see my glamorous career. I sold a company when I was 27. I want to take you back to my childhood for a minute and make you realize that I'm actually no different to any of you. I was born in England and I had a very, very difficult time as a child. 1970s England was quite prejudiced. It meant that I faced a lot of racism. I had people spit at me. I had people hit me. I was once trapped in a car where skinheads came around the car and tried to shake and break the glass of the car. And I couldn't couldn't get out because I was only 6 years old. So I went through a lot of real difficulties in my early childhood. I had anxiety and I had asthma, partly because I had a very, very difficult father, a very dominating, intimidating father who basically wanted me to do whatever he wanted. And as you can imagine, I'm not very good at doing that. And unfortunately, I had a couple of Me Too experiences. Now, there's a line there because all of that happened to me before I hit 18. That all happened to me before I touched the age of 18. And it didn't get easier after 18. I had to deal with a family member having severe depression. I had to deal with obesity of myself and someone else in my family. And at the moment, I sit in front of you as a divorced woman and a single mother. I have a 17-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter. But in spite of all of this, I have been able to make my career. And that's what I want to try and get across to you, that it doesn't matter what you've been through up to now. It doesn't matter how uncertain you are in the future. One of the things that really helped me throughout my whole career was being a chartered accountant. And I'll explain to you why as we go through the slides. So this is a really important point to remember. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have in your head. If you cannot articulate or communicate it, that knowledge is worthless. I want you to really take that in. It is worthless if it just sits in your head and you're unable to communicate it. It doesn't matter how well you can communicate if you cannot understand and think beyond the numbers, then your communication skills are worthless too. Now, one of the great things that chartered accountancy does is it teaches you how to not only learn, but to be able to articulate your knowledge. And it's really important that you don't think that accountancy is just about numbers. You realize that it's much more beyond numbers. If you think it's just about numbers, you're in the wrong career. You might as well go and be a maths teacher. But no, chartered accountancy is not about the numbers. It's about using the numbers to drive business forward. Not looking back, taking what's happened in the past and moving it forward. All right then. So where will you be in the future, and how do you create that really strong foundation? Well, I have to tell you something that's probably going to make you feel very upset at the moment. Do you realize you are going to be working for the next 6 decades? 6 decades, that's 60 years. And if you think in that 60-year period, think about it, you're going to work through your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and I am telling you, you are going to be working into your 70s. If you think you're going to be doing the same thing over those 60 years, you are very, very mistaken. The chances are you will change careers at least once, if not twice, or once a decade. Now, does that mean you might do something completely different to accountancy? Possibly. Does that mean you shouldn't do accountancy now? No. And I'll show you why as we go through this presentation. But the point is, the more skills that you can learn now, the firmer you implant them in your brain, the easier it's going to be for you in the future. So I want you to think about where you are today. And I want you to think about where you're going to be in 5 or 10 or 20 years' time. Maybe you want to be the CEO of an international division. Maybe you want to grow an Indonesian company right from scratch. Maybe you want to join a large Indonesian company. Maybe you want to work for an NGO. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you want to do, you've got to be thinking about how are you going to get there. And most of the time, we think this is how it's going to be. There's the finish line. Here I am. It's going to be so easy to get there. But the truth of the matter is, it isn't. It's really hard. There are going to be all kinds of obstacles that are going to come in your way. Did any of us think 2.5 years ago that COVID would keep us at home for so long? The answer is no. Did anyone wonder, how are we going to get through this? I'm sure you did. The point is, you did get through it, and you're here now today. So no matter what is thrown at us, we've got to make sure that we can deal with it, and we can use the skills that we've got to make sure that we don't just deal with it. We don't just survive, but we thrive going forward. So I want you to think for a minute about the growth in companies. Think about Indonesian companies that were very small and have grown. Think about Amazon, Facebook, think about Google. All of these companies didn't exist 25 years ago, right? They didn't exist. And now look at how big they are. The point is, they don't grow overnight. You can't take a seed and tell it to grow into a tree overnight. It takes time. And sometimes we get really impatient because we kind of think, I want to be there now. The point is, we can't, even if we want to be. So how can we just enjoy where we are and just watch our growth and make our growth as strong as possible as we go forward? Well, if we really want to grow in our fields, let's think about what finance leaders today are having to deal with. The first thing is, businesses are changing constantly. We know this with COVID. Businesses that were completely face-to-face overnight had to switch to being online. Businesses that required lots of people coming in to their offices had to change overnight as well. So business needs are changing constantly. And as a result, the strategies that those businesses are using is also changing constantly. And finance leaders in companies are the backbone of financial strategy. So when you qualify as a chartered accountant, as you go up the chain and become a leader, you are going to be one of the most valuable people within the organization. Because if IT needs extra money, who are they going to talk to? The finance leader. If HR needs some more money because they need to send equipment to the houses of people, they need a finance leader to look at the cost benefit. If companies are thinking about downsizing or upscaling, they need to talk to accountants. So finance leaders are absolutely integral to the business. They are not accountants. Do not think they are accountants. They do not count piles of money. They are business strategists. They are looking at all aspects of the business and saying, how can we make it better? How can we make it more efficient? How can we optimize it? Now, as a chartered accountant working, or a finance leader working for any company in the world now, you are selling to people outside your country. You are buying from people who are not in your country. You probably have other offices around the globe. So therefore, you're expected to understand other cultures too. You're expected to communicate at all levels, from the most junior person to the most senior person in the organization. You might have to write reports, give presentations, etc., etc. And finally, we need people in this world that have got what we call integrated thinking. We can't any longer just think about profitability. The world is not in a sustainable shape at the moment. And the only people I feel that can really make a difference faster than everyone else is the finance leaders. Because if they decide to put money behind creating sustainable policies for the organization, then the organization will react in that way and will thrive and prosper. If the chartered accountant doesn't do that, then the business over time is going to find it's going to shrink. So we need broader and integrated thinking in our decision making. So where is the future of the finance profession? Let's have a look. Well, this comes from 2008. And you're saying, Vandana, oh my goodness, it's 2021. Why are you showing us something from 2008? Because honestly, it hasn't changed very much. If we look at what KPMG said back then, finance strategy is all about people, processes, systems, risk, and information. And the things that impact that are social factors, markets, technology, and regulation. But at the end of the day, at the heart is, what are we going to spend money on? Where are we going to save? How are we going to make a profit? How are we going to make sure that our employees are happy? And how do we look after the world that we're now in today? Okay, so we've got all these drivers and we've got finance strategy at the heart of it. And if you do qualify as a chartered accountant under ICAEW or the Indonesian Chartered Accountancy, you will have the skills to understand the outer layer, the second layer, and that central layer, which I don't think any other qualification across the world actually gives. So let's look now at 2019 and what KPMG have been saying. More than 62% of global CEOs say they need to prioritize innovation processes and execution over the next 3 years. Innovation, if there's innovation going on within the company, somebody is going to have to work out the cost benefit of that innovation. Who's that going to be? Could it be the chartered accountant? It will be. So when we're thinking about bringing in a new innovation, we can't just do it. We've got to think, how much is it going to cost us? Where's the money going to come from? And over how many years are we going to get benefits? And we've got to do those calculations. It's the accountants who are going to do that. More than 67% of global CEOs believe that agility is the new currency of business, and acting too slow will put them out of business. Now, in the old days, if the CEO came to the finance director and said, oh, I'd like the accounts, the CEO would probably say, yeah, I'll get them to you in 2 weeks' time because they're not ready at the moment, because everything was being done manually or on a spreadsheet. Now the information is being done actually within computers. So you can argue, well, chartered accountants, who's going to need them? It's not about doing the numbers. It was never about doing the numbers. It was about interpreting those numbers. So it's really important, if you want to be a leader in the future, the quicker you can create those numbers, the more you know systems, the more you know how to integrate data, the better you're going to be. And our qualifications, ICAEW certainly, but our qualifications have data analytics and they have a computerized environment. So it's like you're in the workplace. They are training you very much for real life. And finally, more than 71% of global CEOs tell us their growth relies on their organization's ability to challenge and disrupt business norms. One of the key things that we do as chartered accountants is do analytical review. Analytical review is comparing this year to last year and looking for anomalies, looking for changes. But we do more than that now. We don't just look at this year compared to last year. We look at everything. We look at all kinds of relationships. So we might look, for example, at the number of people in the office, and do they need to be in the office? This is one of the big things that COVID has taught us. In the past, we were told we all needed to be in the office, and now all of a sudden, it actually works very smoothly from home. So can a chartered accountant actually do the figures really quickly and say, hey, this is how we should be running our businesses from now on, et cetera, et cetera. So what are you going to be expected to do in the finance function in the future? Well, the thing is, you won't need to keep the books. That's all going to be done online. However, you're going to need to check that those books have been kept accurately. You're going to need to be able to understand the technology. That doesn't mean the coding, but it just means you're going to need to be able to test the data going in and test the data going out. You're going to need to see where things can be automated. One of the biggest new assets we're seeing on the balance sheet is data. And chartered accountants need to know nothing can go on the balance sheet unless it's going to bring future economic benefits to the organization. How do we know this data can be used to create economic benefits for the company? If we have a customer list, why is that valuable? And why should that be accounted for? So manage and monetize data. We've talked about serving as a strategist, and we've talked about quickly adapting. So the key is you need to modernize your skills. I think there's probably only 2 or 3 qualifications globally that really are modernized to the extent that they are continually. I know with ICAEW, every 3 years, they look at their whole curriculum and they go and talk to leaders from across the world and say, what do you want to see in your staff? And then the leaders will say, oh, I wish they understood data analytics more. I wish they understood retirement pension planning more, et cetera, et cetera. And then the whole team at ICAEW works on the curriculum, looks at how it can bring it in, and looks at how it can adjust the exam experience to mimic real life. And that's what we do. And that's why you will see that there's that more than 80% of the FTSE 100 companies, so that's the top 100 companies listed on the UK Stock Exchange, have a chartered accountant on their board. Okay, and that's because people prize that certification so much more than most other ones. So these are just some examples of things that chartered accountants are going to need to know or be able to do going forward. I'm not going to talk through them individually, but it just gives you an idea. I think the key one for me is the 5th one down. You're no longer the finance director or the finance leader. You are the finance partner to the business. If they win, you win. And that's the way around it is. We are their partners. We are there to support them. And if you understand how all the different aspects of your qualification kind of come together, you'll see that you'll be able to do that really easily. So if we shift over to the World Economic Forum, they're always doing reports on the skills that will be needed in the future. And if you look at these skills, I can tell you, as somebody who's taught chartered accountancy and continues to be involved with more than one accountancy institute, that at least 7 of these 10 skills are actually covered in our exam papers, right? So whether it's analytical thinking, whether it's innovation, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's complex problem solving, all of that is covered as part of the qualification. You might not get the benefit of it now while you're studying it, but I promise you in the next 10 years to come, you'll be thinking, I studied this. Oh, I studied this. Most of what we studied at school and university, we never used. But I can tell you, think about this. When I left Ernst & Young to set up my startup in Romania, I had to think about how should I price the product? How many staff should I take on? What's my location going to be? Could I afford the rent? How will I run the courses, et cetera, et cetera. And for all of that, I could go back to my accountancy and I could say, oh, I learned how to do this. So it really wasn't very difficult for me to do it. What we'll see in the workplace as well, there is a changing focus for finance leaders. Maybe at the lower levels, you might be still doing the number crunching, the double entry bookkeeping, et cetera, et cetera. But as you go up, what you're going to find is that value is what companies are looking for. Can you add value? And again, if you look at the date here, this was 2008, and it absolutely has played out exactly like this. Because if we look at McKinsey from this year, McKinsey's absolutely talking about finance leaders are spending more of their time on value-added activities. Most people who do chartered accountancy don't necessarily stay in the profession. They might decide to go into industry, they might decide to go and set up by themselves. And, basically, it doesn't matter where they go. The question is, can they add value? And I saw, the question is, how can you add value? Well, the really interesting thing is a chartered accountant is able to look at what's going on within the business, and they'll be able to see something that's going on with customers and something that's going on with manufacturing. And they'll be able to come and say, hey, we need to integrate these two areas. It might be because they've looked at the numbers. It might be because they've talked to the individuals. But chartered accountants, because of the way you've been trained to not just do the accountancy, but to add in the law and the tax, or to not just do the accountancy, but to add in strategic business management, we're used to bringing lots of things together. We're used to case studies and seeing how companies are operating and spotting where a process can be optimized or where costs can be reduced, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all value-adding activities. So what we can see here is that there's a lot more going on in business partnering and financial planning and analysis and other value-added activities. For example, with global companies today, they're going to have tax being paid in lots of different jurisdictions. How do you optimize or minimize the amount of tax that's paid in an ethical way? Does it make sense to, sort of move profits to different places? Like I said, in an ethical way, not just take it to some offshore haven, because as chartered accountants, we're ethical. And if we're not ethical, remember, nobody will trust us. So it's really important that we're seen to be independent as well, and we're seen to be ethical. Otherwise, nobody is ever going to trust our profession. So the new finance pyramid in the future is not going to look like a pyramid at all. It's going to look like this square, and then a long chain up, and then a bit at the top. So at the top, you're going to have senior management. You're going to have one or two people in between, and then lots of people at the bottom. Chartered accountants are not the people at the bottom. They're the people in the pipeline and up at the top, because they can see the whole picture. And that's not just me talking. If you look at most organizations today, they are moving to this structure of, at the moment, it's like a pyramid that goes kind of like this, but over time, it's going to go to what we've got on this screen. So if you look at the way skills have changed again, in the 80s, chartered accountancy was very much about putting data together. But if you look at it today, very little is about putting the data together. It's much more about adding insights. What does that data mean? Especially if you're doing things online. It's about analyzing with the marketing team. Oh, this market seems really interested in our product. If we increase our spending here, how much extra revenue do we think we're going to make? And if we increased it or decreased it by a certain amount, how much would we make? So sensitivity analysis, bringing out insights, for example. And finally, communicating. We have many more stakeholders today than we used to have in the past. Some of the stakeholders that we've always had are people like shareholders. But other stakeholders today are our employees. They're the community that live around us. They're our country. So we need to be able to communicate with different levels of people across the organization. So what do you need to succeed? If you look at this picture very clearly, you should be able to see two images, not one. There's a picture of an old lady, and the old lady has a huge head. That's the whole of her head. And that's her mouth. And this is her nose. And this is her eye. You should also be able to see a young lady who's wearing this hat. This is all her hair. This is her ear. This is her eye. This is her nose. This is her chin. And this is a necklace she's wearing. The question is, which one is correct? And the answer is both are. So what do you need to succeed? You need to have different perspectives. You've got to be able to see the situation from different places. And again, that's part of what our qualification teaches. You need to have a different mindset. You can't just have a numbers mindset. You've got to have a much more general mindset and understand that many, many people will have different views. And you're going to need to amalgamate those views, integrate those views, and decide what's going to be the best way forward. So these are questions that I think you should ask yourself. If you can do this, you will be an asset to any organization. How can you prepare to be able to do that? Well, let's start having a look at a few things we can do. Well, I gave you an idea earlier about all the things that I did. When I was CEO of the international division, I had to prepare accounts, I had to do management accounts, and I had to do a cash flow. If I open a new office in another country, how much is the outflow going to be? How much are the inflows going to be? Where am I going to get clients from? What's the tax situation? What's the legal situation? I needed to know all of that. And one of the things that really helped me was accountancy all the way through. But let's look at the 3 keys to success. The first I told you about really right at the beginning. The first is communication. Both your written and verbal communication needs to be good. If you look at the exams, not as, oh my goodness, I've got another exam to do. But if you look at each exam question as, imagine a client is asking me for this and is going to pay me for my answer. Can I write a really good answer? Now, if you change your mindset so that you're thinking about that, that will make a huge difference. So when you look at your exam questions, do not think, oh gosh, I've got another exam to do. Imagine somebody was paying you for your answer. So how are you going to write it? How are you going to frame it? Are you going to underline the heading or not? Are you going to put it in short, sharp paragraphs, or are you going to write one huge chunk of text? So think about it from that perspective. The second thing is relationships. It's really important to build good relationships within your office and know how to network. And thirdly, you don't just need technical knowledge, you need integrated knowledge. You need people skills, you need relationship skills, you need communication skills. So you need to tie all of that together and integrate your knowledge. So those are the 3 keys that I would say that you need to look at how to develop. The skills that you should develop, these are really easy ones. And if you're studying accountancy, you'll find that you will be able to learn all of these things. Even if you do want to go into IT in the future, or engineering, or something completely different, if you've got this as a base, if you've got these skills as a base, whatever you choose to do in the future, you've got the best chance of success. So the skills that you develop in ICAEW and global qualifications like the Indonesian Chartered Accountancy, you learn how to think on your feet. You need to know how to make recommendations. You need to know how to give technical advice. And you need to be able to talk about global issues. And what you'll find is, as you go through the papers, as you get towards the top, that's what they're all about. Especially in ICAEW, all the top papers are case study based. And the final case study is one where you get information before the exam, which you have to study. And on the day of the exam, you get more information and then you have to do something. That's very much like real life. You'll have a client who will say, yeah, just prepare my monthly accounts. And then all of a sudden one day they'll say, we want to buy this other company. You need to help us. So you need to be ready for this. And that's what qualifications like this teach you to do. So remember that successful leaders don't play a different game. successful leaders play the same game differently. They use their knowledge differently to win the game. And so I just want to remind you of 3 things as well. Although you're doing your training, an important part of your life should be finding someone to mentor you and finding somebody to coach you. For those days when you're kind of like thinking, I'm not sure if what I'm doing is the right thing, or I don't see how this is going to benefit me. If you've got people around you who can mentor and coach you, it will help you develop. And as soon as you can, as soon as you get to being a 2nd year or a 3rd year, why don't you take on some mentees from the 1st year and help encourage them? I could never have got through my qualification if it hadn't been for the fantastic team that I trained with, right from the partner to my seniors. They really cared about teaching me to make sure that I understood. So these are things that I think you should do to really be prepared for the future, no matter what it is. If you can, in the center, develop critical thinking and the confidence to question. It's very difficult when you're junior within an organization, you kind of feel like, I can't question. But if you say, oh, I've got these facts and I was trying to understand this, can you help me? People are often ready to help. Join different forums, whether it's the Indonesian UK chamber, or whether it's, your own chamber and this student fest that's happening, the student council for the Indonesian accountancy body. Get involved, start getting involved and start seeing what's going on. Listen into lectures that are going on and start to build your knowledge. So increase as much experience as you can through finance and other topics, by listening to people, by writing to people on LinkedIn, for example, reading articles in the newspaper that are not necessarily related to accountancy, but can help build your general knowledge of how business is, etc., etc. And as much as possible, try to cross-pollinate. If there's something you've learned, teach it to someone else or talk to a different department, understand about what they're doing, and see if there's anything you can add from your knowledge. And if you do, I think you'll find that the future is going to be really bright for you. So I hope you feel we've covered what I said I was going to cover, where you're going to be in the future, how you create a strong foundation, the key skills, but really understanding that it's up to you to upskill yourself and think about what you can do to prepare. All right, that's it from my side. I'm happy to take questions. I can see there's a few questions in the Q&A box. I think Monica's coming back on.
Okay. Thank you, Vandana, for sharing us a very, very insightful material on how to becoming a future professional accountant. Before we go to the Q&A, I would like to ask you a couple of questions of mine.
Sure.
And we could elaborate more about our session, and then we go straight to the Q&A.
Sure.
My very first question for you, as our participant mostly are aspiring accountants, accounting students and all, I would like to ask, if you could go back to your university life, what subject that you will focus as your current experience required?
If I could go back to university life, sorry, what was that?
What the subject that you will focus?
You know what I would do? I would really love to have added psychology in my degree, because I think, whichever way we look, we're always working with people. And I think this is the most difficult thing. We can do the numbers, we can write the papers, we can do everything, but do we understand each other? So understanding psychology, I think, is what I would have added.
Very interesting. So other than number, psychology things will also helpful for us in our professional life. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Okay. My next question, I'll take my privilege as the moderator for the session.
Yeah, please do.
If you don't mind.
Of course.
Yeah, I listened to your presentation. It is very, very fun to hear you say that, imagining when you're doing the examination that you done something for your clients and you get paid for that. Change that mindset, and then suddenly you're becoming very eager to answer every single question at the examination. That's very fun to get to know about that fact that you share with us. So in your opinion, how relevant having a professional certification like CA, like ICIAW, to prepare ourselves to enter the professional life?
So I'll tell you, I'll honestly tell you something that happened to me. I remember when I was taking my exams, and I remember meeting a bunch of people 2 weeks before my final exam results came out. And I remember saying to them, I'm studying chartered accountancy, right? And then meeting people after I got my results and I found out that I'd passed, and saying, I'm a chartered accountant. The way they treated me when I said I'm a chartered accountant was incredibly different. At the end of the day, there was so much respect that I'd actually passed the exams. And I think that's the biggest benefit, is that it gives you the confidence to be able to do the job. And it gives other people the confidence that you can do the job. Otherwise, if you just say, I'm an accountant, I mean, I don't know what experience you've got. But if somebody says to me, I'm an ICAEW, or I'm a member of Chartered Accountants Worldwide, I'm like, you must be good. So that's what I would say.
That's very interesting. I also agree that certification will boost your confidence. Definitely agree on that part. I think I still have 2 questions before we go to Q&A. It's also to wait the others to share their questions for you. My next question will be, Vandana, in a world full of uncertainty, we see that our problem as an accountant is not only about how to make a profit for the company, right? We are also responsible for what happened in this world, for climate change, for to be very, very polite on the carbon things, on the ESG. In your opinion, and I think that many of us still think that that side is not an accountant responsibility. On your opinion, on your view, how to respond to that?
So I'm very clear. It is 100% our responsibility. At the end of the day, there will not be a world for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. There will not be a world if we continue being as inconsiderate as we have been. And chartered accountants are also to blame for this. We're the ones that created the concept of profit. When I did my degree many, many years ago, I used to argue with my lecturers about whether we should account for the damage we're doing to the environment. And they kept saying, no, that's an externality. But it's not. And at the end of the day, as chartered accountants, we have a duty to make sure that we're not just ensuring that the company is a going concern. We need to ensure that the world is a going concern. So I absolutely disagree with anyone who says it's not an accountant's responsibility.
Yes, I also agree with you for your information that IAI also have built the task force for corporate comprehensive reporting. So if you guys or our participant today have any interest on that, you could also always go to our social media page to learn more about that. I very, very agree that this is also our responsibility, a chartered accountant. Last from me. Well, I have a very, you know, as an accountant, yeah, as a accounting students, a young professional, it's always, we are all not always on the very good vibes. We're not always on the top. Sometimes we're on the low. We sometimes overwhelmed with what's on our plate. We have study, we have work, we have also our personal life. It is sometimes makes us overwhelmed. In order to be professional, is it important for us to also maintain our well-being, to be healthy, to be not only that we're physically healthy, but also mentally. Sometimes as an accountant, we forget that we'll never be kind to ourselves. We keep put everything on our plate. And then I would like to ask you to share with us how important for an accountant to keep our well-being.
I'll tell you, thank you for asking this question. I think it's a really important question. When I was studying accountancy, what I realized was the benefit of multitasking, right? I realized that in order to be a good chartered accountant, I needed to learn how to multitask. I needed to be able to balance my studying, my work, everything, but not my health. I never thought about my health. I always thought about everything to do with the clients, everything to do with my studying, just making sure that I had that in balance. And that's one of the reasons why 4 years ago, I set up the Human Alarm Clock, because I am all about the fact that we have to take a step back. We have to be able to look at our own well-being as well. And as accountants, we're not that good at doing it. But again, what I would say is ICAEW beat me to it because, 20 years ago, they were starting to do courses on well-being. And these are free courses for our members. We have CARBA, which is our Chartered Accountants Benevolent Association, that does lots of free courses, online courses, one-to-one courses. They offer coaching just to get people back to a decent place in terms of well-being. So what I would say is, I think part of becoming a chartered accountant proves that you know how to multitask. Part of becoming a great finance leader who's a chartered accountant is also ensuring that you and your staff have great well-being, because that's how you ensure the sustainability of the company. So make sure your personal balance sheets are not too much on the liability side. Make sure that you've got enough assets. Make sure that you've got enough happiness within you.
I definitely agree for what you have just shared with us, that being kind to ourselves, to still, have a me time, have a good time with ourselves. It is also important to achieve success in life. If you are healthy, mentally, physically, you'll be more productive to achieve your dream. Okay, now I'll just dig with the Q&A session. Let's open the question and answer from our participant. Okay, I have a question. This is very interesting. It's from Ayu. She said that if I'm 50 years old, graduate from accounting, but never worked in that field, instead of working at human resource area for 23 years, how to be an accountant when I'm on my retirement age?
I think it depends, Ayu, what you want to do going forward in your life. At 50, I should admit I'm 50 as well. So I would say that we've got another 20 years of work left. right? So if you spend the next year and a half or 2 years actually getting a professional qualification, it's something that ensures that your retirement is going to be great. You don't have to do all of the exams in one go. If you want to, just do one exam every 6 months. It's up to you. You're not necessarily doing it so that you can get a job as an accountant, but you're doing it to gain the knowledge that's going to help you. I'm always doing courses, even now. I'm always doing graduate courses, postgraduate courses, diplomas, certificates, because continuous learning is very much part of who we are today.
It is very interesting, Vandana. I remember, like last week, we also have a webinar. One of our prominent speakers said that the skill that have to learn by all of us as a professional accountant is learn how to learn.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so it's very related.
Yeah, very true.
Yes. I also have a question from Willie Aji. He has 2 questions for you. The first one is, what are the ways and tips for young accountants to increase their capacity and skills in this uncertain situation?
Right.
Second question is, what are the key skills needed for young accountants to be able to realize their vision and mission to become leaders who have an impact on their nation?
Okay, so answering the first one, ways and tips for young accountants to increase their capacity and skills in uncertain situations. I think there's a couple of things to do. The first thing that I would say, I know it sounds very boring, I would say mindfulness and meditation are really important. What happens is whenever we see uncertainty or, see it anywhere around us, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala that goes off, and it sends stress hormones to the rest of us, okay? Now, we as human beings have this frontal part called the prefrontal cortex, which releases really good chemicals to counteract our amygdala. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is when we're in uncertain situations, anxiety comes in. When we practice something like mindfulness or meditation, we learn to get detached from that problem, and we can actually get the growth and learning center of our brain back on track. So I would say mindfulness and meditation is the first thing. The second thing is try and put yourself in uncertain situations. I don't mean dangerous situations, but where you don't know what's going to happen. This could be volunteer for something in the workplace, volunteer to be on a committee that you know nothing about so that you can learn something new. And each of these things, every time you do something that you're not used to doing, you will find that you can increase your capacity and you'll find that you'll pick up different skills. So that's the first, answering the first question. The second one about key skills needed for young accountants to be able to realize their vision. I think you need to become thought leaders. And in order to become thought leaders, you need to write, or you need to blog, or you need to do podcasts. And maybe before you do that, start looking at people that you admire. You don't have to do all of those things today. You don't have to become a podcaster today. But if you start listening for 6 months to podcasts, you'll get an idea of what you can talk about. And it might be a very small area that you want to expand on. That's fine. But start with something where you're showing some kind of thought leadership.
Very, very clear answer from Vandana. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question from Rini Muhrisa. It is great to hear your experience. I would like to ask what the big step you did when you were in your university life.
I did so many crazy things. Whenever there was an opportunity, I took it. So, the truth about the radio station story was a friend of mine phoned me up and told me that this radio station was looking for DJs. And I was really excited and they'd said that they would teach people how to use the equipment. So I was really excited and I decided to apply for the job. And then I found out that they wanted me to DJ with Hindi music from India. And at that time, I didn't listen to Hindi music at all. And I had my interview on Monday. So on Friday afternoon, I ran home and I was sharing a flat with a friend who happened to love Indian music. And I said, I need you to make me 3 or 4. In those days, this shows how old I am. We used to have cassettes. We used to have the old cassettes that used to be wound. You used to put them into a small tape recorder and you used to press play. So my friend made me some cassettes. And the whole weekend, I had my headphones on, just listening to that music non-stop. And then I went for the interview on Monday. And when they said to me, oh, so what kind of Hindi music do you like? I said so confidently, oh, I love this and I love this and I love this. And they were like really impressed. They were like, that's really good. Those are really good songs. So, did I lie? If he had asked me on Friday, do you know Hindi music? Then I would have lied. And he didn't. He just said, can you come for the interview on Monday? So what I did was I just worked so hard that weekend to make sure I was ready for Monday.
That's a very, very bold action that you did on the past, like YOLO, right? Okay, next question. Vandana, it's from Kukrit Wicaksono.
Yeah.
How can we increase our analytical thinking or capability while we are still a fresh graduate? We don't have any circumstances to push us being so critical, especially in analyzing the company financial and suggest for the next strategy.
Brilliant question, Kukrit. Thank you. Actually, you have so many circumstances where you can push, right? And I'm going to give you a really simple example. In Indonesia, I think you have your version of Shark Tank, right? If you don't, you will know the Western Shark Tank with the billionaires who run it. I'll tell you a really easy thing to do. Get together with 2 or 3 of your friends. Watch the first bit of the presentation. So watch when somebody comes on and they're pitching their product, right? And stop, because you'll be watching it, I'm sure, on Netflix or on Amazon Prime or Google or YouTube or whatever. Pause it. And before the judges answer, give your opinion. Do you think it's a good product? Do you think they've answered enough about sales? Ask those questions. This is why I think it's a good idea to do it with a couple of other people, or watch it as an Amazon party or whatever it is. You can watch it on Zoom and, pause it and just say, what would you say? And have that discussion. Pretend that you're sharks. Is the business good? Does it have a good case? Do the financials sound strong, et cetera, et cetera? So that's one thing that you can do. And I think that's a really fun activity to do. So I think there's many other shows. Even The Apprentice is good in that way. Just watch it and just really analyze, how did whoever's running the program, how did they decide that this one person should be fired, right? What did they show? What did they do? That's critical thinking. Don't just accept everything that's thrown at you. The third thing that you can do is find a really, like the strongest business newspaper that you have, and find kind of the lightest business paper that you have, and find the same story being covered in both those papers. Then look for an international paper that covers that same story and compare the way the views are given. And you'll start to see that you can build up critical thinking. Critical thinking is one of those things that it's not like a switch. You turn it on and suddenly you're a critical thinker. It's like a dimmer switch. It's one of those slow burning switches that you practice it and practice it and practice it, and then you get better.
Very, very a good answer. Thank you, Vandana, for sharing with us. I also agree. If you guys don't know what is The Apprentice, you could always YouTube that show. And also, like, you know, you read business newspaper, it will be helpful. Another question from Anonymous. Thank you for sharing, Ms. Vandana. It was very insightful. I would like to ask a question. In your opinion, is it important to do a lot of internship to develop our skill while we are still learning in university? What is the ideal number of internship that you think it will be good for us to developing? Thank you.
Okay, so I think there's two things here. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So I would rather say it's better to do one internship where you can say, I learned these 4 skills, than say I did 10 internships, right? So that's the first thing. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. The second is, think about what you want to learn. So if you think your business understanding is weak, can you get an internship in the commercial department of a company? Or can you get an internship in even the social media part of the business so that you can understand how they're projecting themselves on social media, for example? So I think it's really important to look at the person and say, where does this person need help? Or what do they want to be doing in the future? And then look to see, is there an internship that's going to match those needs? If there isn't one, just take anything, but do it in the way that I told you about exam questions. Imagine that every interaction that you have, the person's paying for your time. So how would you do it then? How would you do it to really honor the fact that they're paying you? That's what I would suggest.
So it is not always about the quantity, but the quality of the internship it is. But we are all agree that internship will be good for us, right?
Yes.
Our next question. Hello, Ms. Vandana. It's from Dian Ayuning Tias. Hello, Ms. Vandana. What have you shared is really inspired me. I have a question. How do you fight when your own brain tell you you cannot do what you do? Please tell me. I'm not the only one battling my own brain. Thank you.
That's a great question. I'll tell you something that happened 4 years ago, and maybe this will give you an idea of what to do. 4 years ago, when I exited my last company, I found that most of the people that I was hanging around with were people who loved to go out and party and drink a lot and do all kinds of things. And it really wasn't me. I kind of was doing it, but I did not want to be out until 4 in the morning. I didn't want to be, doing some of those things. And so I made a really hard decision to change my friends. If they're not going to support me in growing to who I know I'm capable of being, then I will find another group of friends who will help me. And I went through 6 months of hell. I have to tell you, it was hell, because at the time I was going through a divorce as well. But I went through it. It was lonely and it was hard, but I got the opportunity to restart myself. And through that, I started to find people who actually encouraged me to do what I'm doing. So if you've got friends who are not supporting you, don't just cast them off immediately. Mine, I went to those people who were doing the partying and saying, hey, listen, is this what you want to do with your life? And they're like, yeah, this is the time of our lives. Our kids are growing up. We're earning lots of money. Why not? And I was like, but I'd kind of like to have some serious conversations. No, we're not into that kind of stuff. So when they made it clear to me that they weren't willing to change, my only option was I had to change, which meant that I had to kind of move away from them. I do still see them every now and again, but it's not a big deal, right? With your friends, tell them. They're not, you saying I can't do this is not helping me and it's not helping you. How about you help me try and do it? And if they say no, then you know.
We can always count on our society, like everyone near us, the positive vibes that we are always looking for.
Find the vibes, find the positive vibes, find your tribe.
Couldn't agree more. We need an army to build ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Helping each other.
Exactly.
Definitely agree. It's very interesting. Our next question is from Anonymous. If someone asks you, they can improve themselves, analytical thinking, behavior, or else in this profession while practice, or let's say if they face a case, what do you think about this statement? Do you agree?
I'm not really clear on what the question is. Do you?
They can improve themselves while practice.
If someone asks you, can you improve yourself while practice? I'm not clear.
I guess we could just move on to our next question.
Yeah, I think so, because I if they can rewrite it and then we can understand it, they probably just wrote it in a bit of a hurry.
Okay. Okay. Our question. This is a very, very important question about digital transformation. About something like artificial intelligence or technology nowadays. The question is how digital transformation impact accountant to be a future leader.
Yeah, just know that if you want to be an accountant, you have to embrace digital. If you don't embrace digital, you cannot survive as an accountant. As an accountant, you don't need to be somebody who can do coding. What you need to be is somebody who understands your domain, which is accountancy. You understand business strategy. What you need to do is put yourself together with somebody who's good in IT. It will take time, but you work together with that person to think about how to digitally transform the business. All the projects that I've seen that have been the most successful, and I co-wrote a report last year, as Monica mentioned, which was about finance and automation. All the leaders we spoke to said, our expertise is in one area. We worked with a team who had expertise in IT and let's say payables or whatever. And together we worked out what the best way to improve that process was. So it is going to impact you no matter what, whichever way you look at it, it's going to impact you. But don't be frightened of it. Know that you've got your core expertise, other people have theirs, and together you're absolute dynamite.
Definitely agree. Also, sometimes it is very annoying me when people keep telling us that someday accounting profession will be replaced by the AI and etc. etc. Meanwhile, it is not like that. But most of us, our accounting students who are still on their early age, they sometimes believe, and it gets them. What do you think on that, Vandana?
In what sense?
You know, that they are afraid that they will replace.
Yeah. And all I can say is years ago when the computer came out, all the accountants thought they were going to be replaced as soon as the computer came out. When the first adding machine came out, accountants thought they were going to be replaced. They haven't been, and they won't be, as long as you continue to upskill. And as long as you know that you're not going to be doing the double entry bookkeeping, but you're going to be doing the advanced stuff. You're going to be helping program the AI. That's what you're going to be doing in your roles. Bookkeepers should worry. Double entry bookkeepers should worry about their jobs, but not you. That's what I would say.
Okay, I'll take a note on that. So hopefully our participant today also making a lot of notes about what we have been discussed. It's very, very a good time with you to talk about accounting skill, what should we learn and what should we know from the early years. Thank you very much, Vandana, for sharing with us. It's a very, very fruitful discussion.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really, really loved the conversation.
Yes. Before we close our discussion, do you mind to share your closing statement for all of us, for the aspiring accountants?
What I would say to you is never be afraid of the future. The future is there. You influence the future doesn't influence you. So go out there and make the difference that you know you can.
Thank you very much, Vandana. I would like to give you a virtual applause. Thank you very much for being with us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from our discussion with Vandana Saxena Poria. Before we close this session, I would like to remind you again on our upcoming webinar on APAFest 2021. We will have an inspiring session with IFAC President, how to be a difference maker, on November 2nd at 3 p.m. Jakarta time. We will have IFAC President Alan Johnson and IAI National Council member Professor Siddhartha Utama as our esteemed panelists. Please do not miss the chance to discuss with the IFAC President. Our second webinar is Shape Your Future, Career Development, How to Enter Professional Work on November 6, 2021 at 10 a.m. Jakarta time. We will have Bapak Setio Anggoro Dewo, Ibu Elizabeth Imelda, Bapak Endro Wahyono, and Bapak Permana Adi Saputra, who will share with you guys how to prepare and enter the professional life. And also do not forget the closing ceremony of APAFest 2021 that will be part of FinBiz 2030 led by Chartered Accountant Worldwide and One Young World. The theme will be Recover, Refocus, Rebuild. It will be held in conjunction with the International Accounting Day on November 10, 2021. Make sure you are all well registered and watch the session. On behalf of IAI, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to our speaker, Vandana, and also ICIAW. Also to all of the participants, thank you for joining our session today. I'm Monica Nabilia. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy. I see you on another webinar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Satu Indonesia, semangat Astra terpadu untuk Indonesia. Langkah nyata Grup Astra untuk berperan aktif serta berkontribusi dalam meningkatkan kualitas masyarakat Indonesia melalui karsa, cipta, dan karya terpadu dalam produk dan layanan karya anak bangsa. Insan Astra yang unggul serta kontribusi sosial yang berkelanjutan untuk memberikan nilai tambah bagi kemajuan bangsa Indonesia. PT Astra International Tbk sepanjang perjalanannya sejak tahun 1957 senantiasa mendedikasikan karya nyata demi kemajuan bangsa Indonesia. Astra terus berkembang hingga kini memiliki lebih dari 180.000 karyawan dan lebih dari 200 anak perusahaan yang tersebar di seluruh penjuru Nusantara. Sejalan dengan butir pertama Catur Dharma menjadi milik yang bermanfaat bagi bangsa dan negara, Astra senantiasa menjalankan kontribusi sosial berkelanjutan bagi masyarakat Indonesia yang dibentuk dalam kerangka yang efektif dan terstruktur. Berfokus pada 4 pilar yaitu Astra untuk Indonesia Sehat, Astra untuk Indonesia Cerdas, Astra untuk Indonesia Hijau, dan Astra untuk Indonesia Kreatif. Dengan didukung oleh 9 yayasan, Astra berusaha untuk selalu berperan aktif dan mendedikasikan karya untuk bangsa Indonesia, serta berupaya menjadikan Indonesia sebagai bangsa yang sejahtera dan bermartabat. Astra untuk Indonesia Sehat. Kesejahteraan suatu bangsa tergantung pada kualitas hidup generasi penerusnya. Untuk itu, kesehatan ibu, anak, dan remaja adalah hal yang utama. Melalui Astra untuk Indonesia Sehat, Astra akan berusaha mewujudkannya karena berawal dari merekalah lingkungan dan masyarakat yang sehat akan tercipta. Astra untuk Indonesia Cerdas. Peningkatan kualitas hidup masyarakat bisa diraih dengan perbaikan pendidikan, pelatihan, dan keterampilan. Untuk itu, Astra berkomitmen untuk membangun masyarakat yang cerdas dan mandiri dengan memaksimalkan pengetahuan dan keterampilan sumber daya manusia di Indonesia. Astra berupaya senantiasa berkontribusi pada dunia pendidikan di Indonesia untuk memastikan anak-anak bangsa mendapatkan pendidikan yang layak guna meningkatkan taraf hidupnya. Astra untuk Indonesia Hijau. Melalui Astra untuk Indonesia Hijau, Astra senantiasa berkomitmen untuk menjalankan keberlanjutan untuk mewujudkan lingkungan yang sehat, aman, dan nyaman. Astra aktif dalam berbagai program penghijauan sebagai wujud nyata kontribusi dalam meningkatkan kualitas lingkungan hidup. Satu planet untuk saat ini dan masa depan menanti kita sebagai manusia dan jutaan keanekaragaman hayati lainnya di bumi. Astra untuk Indonesia Kreatif. Melalui Astra untuk Indonesia Kreatif, Astra turut membangun kesejahteraan masyarakat dengan membina dan mengembangkan usaha mikro, kecil, dan menengah yang tersebar di penjuru Nusantara. Astra berupaya memberikan pelatihan, pengarahan, serta menunjang fasilitas dan sarana yang tepat dan mendukung dengan satu tujuan, yaitu meningkatkan kesejahteraan bangsa melalui sumber daya manusia yang unggul serta lapangan kerja yang baik untuk mereka. Sejak tahun 2010, Astra menginisiasi Satu Indonesia Awards yang merupakan apresiasi Astra untuk anak bangsa atas setiap perjuangan dalam bidang kesehatan, pendidikan, lingkungan, kewirausahaan, dan teknologi. Kampung Berseri Astra yang berfokus pada pengembangan kampung secara terpadu di bidang kewirausahaan, kesehatan, pendidikan, dan lingkungan saat ini berjumlah lebih dari 130 kampung di 34 provinsi. Desa Sejahtera Astra merupakan program kewirausahaan berbasis masyarakat dengan mengoptimalkan potensi ekonomi lokal unggulan. Di dalamnya terdapat pendampingan bagi pelaku usaha, mulai dari pelatihan, bantuan prasarana, hingga fasilitas akses permodalan dan pemasaran produk yang saat ini berjumlah lebih dari 900 desa di 34 provinsi. Sejak Maret 2020 hingga saat ini, Astra melalui Nurani Astra berkomitmen untuk turut memberikan bantuan kepada pemerintah, tenaga kesehatan, dan masyarakat Indonesia dalam menghadapi pandemi COVID-19. Untuk menjadi manfaat bagi bangsa, Astra terus berupaya untuk peduli, merangkul, dan meraih harapan bangsa demi terus tumbuh dan berkembang secara berkelanjutan. Karena senyum Anda dan senyum anak bangsa adalah senyum Astra, senyum Indonesia. Kita semua bersatu dan melaju menapaki langkah-langkah terbaik menuju Indonesia yang tangguh dan tumbuh bersama. Astra, sejahtera bersama bangsa.
Oke, Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian, dalam hitungan 3 kami akan menutup Zoom webinar room ini.
Terima kasih telah bergabung bersama kami. 3, 2, 1.